What happens when a pilot flies drunk? Today we're going to find out as we take a look at 3 shocking stories about pilots that were drinking and tried to fly, including footage from a very disturbing incident where the dad actually filmed himself drinking while his 12-year-old son flew the plane, and the tragic twist to the story that took place after they crashed. My name is Hoover and welcome to your Pilot Debrief. Our first story begins with an air traffic controller that senses there's something wrong with the pilot that she's talking to. Let's check out the audio and see what happens.
Good afternoon, Jet Test 410, level now 240.
What's your call sign?
Jet Test 410, 240, citation.
Jet Test 410 Los Angeles Center, descend and maintain flight level 220.
220, roger.
Jet Test 410, you guys can't navigate the RNAV arrival, is that correct?
The airport is in sight, ma'am. Whenever, I'll take the visual.
Jet Test 410, roger.
Jet Test 410, airport in sight. Whenever it works out, I'll take the visual.
Jet Test 410, roger, I'll pass it on the Vegas approach. You'll be talking to them in about 10 minutes.
Roger that. Out of 240, descent 220, Jet Test 410.
You can already tell that his speech sounds slurred and the situation is definitely going to get worse. The pilot had departed from Washington and his flight plan listed Henderson Executive Airport as his destination, which is just south of Las Vegas, and the controller is asking if he can do the RNAV arrival. This is a standard sequence of points and altitudes that controllers can direct you to fly in order to help manage the flow of traffic in and out of busy airspace. But instead of answering her question, he tells the controller twice that he has the airport in sight and he'll take the visual approach. Now, other than his speech, this is her first clue that something's wrong because he's currently about here on the map, which is still about 100 miles away from the airport. So it's extremely unlikely that he can see the airport right now.
410, flight heading at 220.
Okay, right turn 220, Jet Test 410.
And Jet Test 410, if you're able, you're clear direct Henderson Airport.
Well, at this point, absolutely. Direct Henderson, Jet Test 410, thank you.
You can see this slight bend to the right where he makes the initial turn to that heading of 220, and that's pretty much the direction that he needs to go if he's flying direct to the Henderson Airport, but watch what happens next.
Jet Test 410, clear to descend.
Jet Test 410, descend and maintain 2000, Las Vegas altimeter 2980.
12,000, 410.
And Jet Test 410, the heading is 220, and if you can navigate to direct Henderson, you can do so at this time.
Absolutely, I'll make the right turn now.
In case you missed it, instead of flying direct to the airport, he actually turned to the left about 90 degrees, and that's why the controller is telling him to turn back to the 220 heading. What she doesn't know, other than the fact that he's drunk, is that he's looking out his window at the Mesquite Municipal Airport because that's where he's planning to land. And just wait until you hear his reason why that he told the police. But there's no way you could possibly get these two airports confused unless you're drunk. One of them is in a small town in the middle of the desert, and the other is in Las Vegas. But what the pilot says next starts to paint a clearer picture for the controller.
Jet Test 420.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, here's the deal. Like, until I get to 18, I feel like I'm still IFR, and I want to get down there, so.
Jet Test 410, yes, sir. Just descend and maintain 2000, and once you guys get to 2000, you'll still be IFR with me.
That's fine. Airport's in sight. I just didn't want to go over there and bug your business out of L.A. Or not Los Angeles, but the deal. And so I cancel at this point.
Jet Test 410, roger. And I'm going to want you guys to remain on your present code for VFR flight advisories.
Absolutely. Airport's in sight. No problem. No problem.
That last clip is the only time the pilot even remotely hints that he won't be flying to his original destination when he said that he didn't want to go over there and get in her business, meaning he didn't want to fly into the Las Vegas airspace. He's asking for a descent below 18,000 feet. That way he can legally cancel IFR and he can fly under visual flight rules called VFR. And that way he can just point the jet where he wants to go. Even though he does cancel IFR, the controller doesn't want him to change his transponder code, so that way she can keep tracking him and also tell him about other traffic that's around him. And you can see that she's pulled up his track details, so that way she can watch his altitude, and you're about to find out why.
And Jet Test 410, are you guys doing okay up there? Is there any oxygen issues or anything like that?
Say again?
Are you guys doing okay up there? You're not having any issues like oxygen issues or anything?
Captain said you're good.
Okay. And Jet Test 410, I just wanted to verify that you guys are landing Henderson Airport. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm just making the descent now.
Roger.
First of all, this controller is doing an amazing job. Knowing that something is wrong, she assumes that the pilot is hypoxic. This can happen when you have an unrecognized loss of cabin pressure and there's not enough oxygen in the air. She's monitoring his altitude because if there is a cabin pressure problem, then as he descends, the oxygen level should increase and he should be able to recover. Just so you know, hypoxia is just as dangerous as flying drunk, if not worse, because it could affect everyone on the plane and not just one person. I still remember when the Air Force sent me to the altitude chamber during pilot training, because that's where you learn to recognize the symptoms of hypoxia, because everyone's a little different, and watch what this guy does.
Four spades.
What is it? What's your symptoms, sir?
What are you feeling, number 14?
Four of spades.
What's your symptoms, sir?
Four of spades right now.
He clearly didn't recognize that he was hypoxic, and the 4 of spades was the last card he remembered before his brain started to shut down. And the drunk pilot sounds a lot like this guy because he's slow to respond and he keeps repeating himself. And if I was the controller, I probably would have thought he was hypoxic too, because you don't expect to hear a drunk pilot on the radio.
Jet Test 410.
Jet Test 410, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Airport's in sight, requesting lower, cancel IFR.
Jet Test 410, roger, stand by. Jet Test 410, descend and maintain 1000. Descend and maintain 11,500, 11,500.
11,500, Jet Test 410, descend 11,500.
Even though he's already canceled IFR and he told her the airport's in sight, he does it again, just like the 4 of spades guy. He just keeps repeating himself. He eventually descends down to 11,000 feet, and if he was hypoxic, then at this point there should be enough oxygen for him to recover, but he's still having issues, and this next part is probably the scariest audio that I've heard in a while, and then we're going to see what his landing actually looked like.
11,500, requesting visual.
Jet Test 410, roger, and you can expect that shortly.
Say again?
Jet Test 410, you can expect that shortly.
Okay, cancel IFR.
Jet Test 410, roger, just descend and maintain 11,000, maintain 11,000.
Descend to 11,000, 410. Looks like a center citation.
Jet Test 410, go ahead.
Yeah, cancel IFR. Cancel center flight Boeing. Squawk 1200 now.
Jet Test 410, just stay with me for a few more minutes, okay? And you guys are VFR right now. You're no longer IFR, but stay with me for just a few more minutes, okay? Jet Test 410, did you hear me?
Go ahead.
And Jet Test 410, just stay with me on this frequency. You guys are VFR, but I want you to remain on this frequency on your code, okay?
Yeah, I'm under the radar. It's fine. 1200 and have a great day.
No, Jet Test 410, you stay on this frequency. You stay with me and you keep your transponder on. Please stay with me and keep your transponder on. Jet Test 410 Center.
Go ahead.
Test 410, just stay on this frequency. I want to keep talking to you. Is that okay? And Jet Test 410, we're just concerned about your flight right now. You have another person with you in the cockpit?
You have a
Jet Test 410 Center?
I'm about to show you his crash landing, but stick around to learn about a drunk dad that tried to take his son flying and watch the footage of a pilot that drinks while his son flies the plane. But first, that radio call would be the last time the controller would hear from the drunk pilot as he faded off the radar. The pilot, without talking to anyone else, tried to land at the Mesquite Municipal Airport, and he said that was because during his initial descent from altitude, the right thrust reverser lever felt weird and the thrust reverser warning light began to illuminate, and he was simply trying to avoid the busy airspace around Las Vegas. He touched down hard about halfway down the runway and slid off the left-hand side where the plane caught on fire. He never declared an emergency, and no one believed his story, even though he tried to claim that he only drank the vodka after he crashed. His blood alcohol content was 0.288, and he was arrested and lost his flying privileges. And thankfully he was the only one on the plane, unlike these next two disturbing stories that you're about to hear. Our next story takes place in Melbourne, Florida, and the reason that this one was so disturbing was because the pilot had his 10-year-old son with him on the flight. The pilot dad was 57 years old at the time, and he was flying, or at least trying to fly, a Cessna 337 Skymaster, and he claimed to have about 1,200 hours of total flight time. He had filed a flight plan to Dayton, Ohio, and requested a taxi from the north ramp to runway 9 left for takeoff. The controller told him that his flight plan had expired and he needed to return to the ramp and shut down, but the real reason why the controller asked him to do that was because the pilot allegedly told the tower he wanted to go to Melbourne, which is actually where he already was, and his speech sounded slurred.
Hold your position. I didn't tell you to move. Return to your hangar and call the tower.
Several witnesses reported hearing a child screaming on the radio while the pilot was talking to the controller, and at one point the child is heard saying, "Dad, no, stop the airplane," while the air traffic controller was also telling him, "3-2 Mike, turn your engines off." The pilot refused to comply with the instructions and he began taxiing out to the runway as the tower controller continued to try and get him to stop.
Okay, 3-2 Mike, where are you going, sir? Twin Cessna 3-2 Mike, turn your engines off, sir. Kill your engines.
As the dad continued taxiing out to the runway, he lost control of the aircraft, he turned right into the grass, and he crashed into a satellite communication platform. The police showed up a few minutes later, and this is the best part. As they began questioning the dad, the 10-year-old son told the police that he knew what had happened and to check his dad's computer bag for the answers, saying that they would find a bottle of alcohol. Thankfully, the child was unharmed, and the pilot was sentenced to 5 years probation and forced to surrender his pilot's license. Alright, if you were frustrated and angry with the pilots in those last two stories, then take a deep breath because you're about to see the shocking video of a father drinking beer while he tries to teach his 12-year-old son to fly, and you're not going to believe the tragic twist of events that happened after they crashed. The video starts with the son performing the takeoff from what's likely one of the father's ranches in Brazil, and first of all, neither of them are wearing their seatbelts, and the dad knows that he's doing something wrong because he's using his finger to cover up the aircraft registration number. Also, the son is wearing flip-flops, which isn't recommended because they can make it difficult to operate the rudder, which is kind of important in a multi-engine aircraft, especially if you lose an engine. And the dad is basically going to coach his son throughout the entire takeoff roll, and there's just so many things wrong with this video. Aside from the fact that you shouldn't drink beer while you're flying, you don't teach a kid how to fly by starting them off on a multi-engine aircraft, and you definitely don't try to hold your phone to film it at the same time. What happens if an engine fails on takeoff? The dad isn't really ready to take over the controls, and the kid probably isn't going to know what to do. Now, I fully support anyone that wants to get their children flight lessons when they do it the right way, safely, and legally. And I'm not going to show the kid's face out of respect for the family, but you can just tell that he's super excited, and this was probably his first time doing this, and it's just really sad to see because he has no idea the danger that he's in because of his dad. And before we see what the dad says next, I want to be clear about something. We still don't know the exact date and time that this video was taken, and we still don't know how much the dad had to drink or if he was drunk at the time of the crash, but my question to you is, does it really matter? Does that justify the actions that you see in this video? Listen to what the dad says, and then I'll share my thoughts and the shocking tragic twist to the story. He basically says, it's okay if the passenger has one, right? And the answer to that question is no, because he's not a passenger on this flight. He's the one ultimately responsible for their safety, and even one beer is too much when you're flying. What we see in this video is a complete disregard for safety and a father being extremely irresponsible without any respect for the rules or the regulations. The father was taking his son on a flight to see his mother, and they crashed shortly after takeoff and they both died. And the worst part of the story is that when the dad's current wife heard the news of the crash, she went into a room in her house and shot herself. It's really simple. Don't drink and fly. If you do this, or if you know a pilot that does it, please get some help. Now, I know this was a tough debrief, but I appreciate you watching until the end. And if you want to learn from another debrief, then be sure to check out this video on the screen about how a flight instructor was a bully and he got his student killed. And I'll see you next time.